to P-Flag, from P-Flag Santa Barbara. It's just wonderful to see you all here this afternoon. Thank you so much for coming out. It's good to see you all here. I want to just say a few words about P-Flag, and it was founded in 1972, and P-Flag has grown to be the nation's largest family and ally organization of its kind. We are the extended family of the LGBT community, uniting people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, with families, friends, and allies. Our monthly meetings are at the heart of what we do. We are committed to creating a safe space for support, education, and advocacy. Because together, we are stronger. P-Flag's vision is to create a world where difference is celebrated, and that's what we're all about here today, to celebrate our difference. And all people are valued. We've come a long way in the last 40 years since P-Flag was founded, and we all know we have a long way to go. In June of last year, we were celebrating the Supreme Court decision that made marriage equality legal in all 50 states. And is followed, unfortunately, by a nationwide backlash leading up to June of this year and the horrific tragedy in Orlando. It is more important than ever that you are here, because together we are stronger. And just a word about our sponsors. We are deeply grateful to Pacific Pride, their committed and caring staff that do so much wonderful work for the LGBT community and who have nurtured and supported the birth and blossoming of P-Flag Santa Barbara from the beginning 2 years ago. And especially to the 24, count them, 24 faith communities and other ally organizations that responded to our call to be here in support of the LGBT community. Just knowing that there are so many who deeply care gives great hope. Allies of faith are crucial. Because together we are stronger. We hope that you will stay after our celebration, schmooze and hang out with the sponsors that have put a lot of effort into making their tables beautiful. Learn who's here, share refreshments with us. We have a lot of wonderful, wonderful cookies. And we hope that whoever you are, wherever you are, however you identify, and wherever you are in your journey, you will feel inspired by our celebration this afternoon, and you will be inspired to come out more, to take action, because together we are stronger. So let our celebration begin. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, let us take a deep breath. And let us acknowledge the presence of the divine who sees us all as equal. Love embraces all races and ethnicities. Love celebrates the diversity and plurality of humanity and the many colors of skin and differences in hair and eyes and all the other things that make us unique. We are all worthy of love. Love calls us to work for racial justice and equity.
Love embraces all.
Love embraces all abilities, whether we roll or walk or stumble or dance or fidget our way through each day. We are embraced by love. Each of us does things differently, and we all have different abilities. We are all worthy of love. Love calls us to be inclusive and accessible.
Love embraces all.
Love embraces all genders, all identities, and all expressions. Whatever pronouns we use, whatever clothes we wear, whoever we love, we are all worthy of love. Love calls us to speak against exclusion and bigotry.
Love embraces all.
Love embraces all religions. Wherever we find the divine, whatever it is that we find sacred or holy, however we gather in worship, every path and tradition brings wisdom to this circle. We are all worthy of love. Love calls us to reach across the barriers of difference and listen to each other.
Love embraces all.
Love, period.
Our next song is actually not the Horvet. It's a setting of the same words by Mark Miller. The words were found on the wall of a holding area in Auschwitz, and they believe it was written by a young girl.
We gather today to celebrate the unique diversity within each and every one of us. We also are reminded to pause and to lift up those in the LGBTQ community who on a daily basis struggle for safety, for inclusion, for their basic rights. And so today, I invite you to join me in this litany of lamentation and forgiveness. Your response will be a sung response. The choir will play through the response once, and then we will sing it together.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again. We forgive
places where our society has let fear take root.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the times we have been silent when we could have raised our voices.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the times we have hurt each other with careless words and deeds.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the self-doubt, shame, guilt, and eternalized oppression that keep us from living joyfully and fully.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the times our own needs have blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the times we have fallen short of our ideals.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the many ways in which we have become divided, devalued, and let down.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
And for each time that we have lost sight of our fundamental unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Amen.
The song, composed by Debbie Friedman, the late Debbie Friedman, was inspired by Psalm 126. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Sing with me, those who sow in tears, will reap in joy, will reap in joy, will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Join with me, Heather. Those who sow in tears, will reap in joy. Let's have a little bass and a little guitar. Here we go. Together, everybody. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears, will reap in joy, will reap dark place it grows, like a flower in the desert, the oasis of our souls. Come back, where we belong. You who hear our longing cries, our lips are filled with song. You can see our tear-filled eyes. Those who sow, sow in tears, will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. One more time from the top, those who sow. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy.
I'm Easton, and this is Kai. We're going to read a poem today. It's called The Activist by Peterson Toscano. You want to be an activist and change the world? Be yourself, without apology and without shame. Walking hand in hand in public with the one you love, knowing that it's a loving act of protest. You want people to change and laws to change, a global transformation into a shimmering butterfly society.
Then you must change. Be yourself. Be real. Knowing that the most powerful activists in the world are those people who are unashamedly themselves.
And what am I gonna do?
There is a narrative that is common to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This has nothing to do with it. This is simply to shield my screen from the sun. There we go. All right. So, it's the story of Abraham, or Ibrahim. For those of you who aren't familiar with the story, let me fill in a few details. Abraham lived in ancient Mesopotamia, known as modern-day Iraq. One day, Abraham was called by God to leave his home and family for a new land God would show him. There, God promised his family would prosper. So Abraham said goodbye to his people and to the life that he knew. And he and his wives, Sarah and Hagar, wandered the dangerous, desolate desert in search of an unknown land, trusting that God would lead them through their wilderness. What Abraham wanted more than anything was a child, an heir. But he grew older and remained childless despite God's promise that his family would prosper. After years of wandering and waiting, Abraham questioned God, when will this wilderness wandering end? When will I know the joy of your promise fulfilled? So God led him at night to the edge of darkness. Look up, Abraham. See the stars? Count them, if you can. You can't, can you? So shall your descendants be. Your family will one day have as many children in it as there are stars in the sky. Such a bold promise of abundance. But a promise God would make good on. Hagar would bear Ibrahim a son, Ishmael. Sarah would bear Abraham a son, and they would name him Isaac. And from these offspring would grow great nations. From Ishmael's line would sprout the great Arab tribes, and Muhammad, the greatest prophet of Islam. Isaac would become the forefather of the nation of Israel. And Abraham would be known and revered as the father of all the great prophets of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. From that dangerous, desolate, wilderness wandering came nations of descendants and the promise of abundant life fulfilled. God knows our people, LGBTQ people that is, are familiar with wilderness wandering. From the August 21st headline in the news press, which read, Westmont LGBTQ disappointed, ... to the brutal murder of Turkish trans activist Hande Kader, to the struggles of our own daily lives, we know wilderness wandering. And we are practiced at those horror stories. I do not believe we need to rehearse them here today. Today, I want us to remember a different kind of story, our stories of life abundant. Because God knows our people are also masters at finding hope in the face of disappointment, joy in the midst of sorrow, light in the midst of darkness. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. This is where my story, our story, I pray, meets Abraham's. Life abundant. Eyer-Delevett. I am a wife of 17 years to a deeply honorable and loving woman. Pardon me. I'm mommy to a wonderfully sparkly 6-year-old, and I am an Episcopal priest. That combination may sound incongruent to some folks, but it is the life abundance with which God has blessed me. I grew up in the deep south of the 1970s and 80s. I grew up Episcopalian, went to an Episcopal school. My folks took my brother and I to church every Sunday and often on Wednesday nights. My brother and I both sang in a Christian youth choir and went to youth renewal retreats as teenagers. And then I went off to college, up north, to a women's college, no less. And I discovered this unexpected but undeniable attraction to women. Not just a physical attraction, but a holistic attraction of body, mind, heart, and soul. Discovering this about myself was a homecoming of sorts, as many of you may understand. Of course, you might imagine what this discovery did to my faith and my relationship with the church. You might imagine my return to a family bent on converting me, a church bent on excluding me. You'd be wrong. My brother, the first person I told in my family, simply said, "I am so proud of you, Amy." My parents and I moved with love and devotion through a necessary period of adjustment and mutual understanding. In college, I found feminist and liberation theologies and discovered faithful Christian voices that reflected my own beliefs and worldview. I'd found a place for me in my faith. I wasn't so sure that would happen back at my home church in the Deep South. This was over 20 years ago, after all. So one day, while I was home on winter break, the phone rang and I picked up. It was my parents' priest. "Hi, Amy. Is your mom home?" "No, she's out." "Oh, what are you up to?" "I'm writing a paper." "Oh, what's it on?" "It's for my theology class." "Oh, what's the topic?" "Feminist interpretations of the Trinity?" I was prepared for an uncomfortable and swift end to the conversation. Instead, he said, "Wow, that sounds really interesting. Would you drop a copy by my office when you're finished writing it?" At this time when I was just about to slam the door on the church, assuming I wasn't welcomed, he held the door wide open. A few years later, it must have been 1999, after my wife and I were living in Atlanta, I began to discern a call to ordain ministry. But I couldn't quite imagine that the church would confirm this call. And it wasn't because I thought I wasn't worthy. I was no more worthy or unworthy than anybody else, I figured. I knew that God and I had had a pretty good thing going on for as long as I could remember. It was because I thought the church might be too small-minded, too small-hearted. Nonetheless, I approached a grad school professor of mine who was also an Episcopal priest. He wore his clericals with blue jeans and had his ear pierced and seemed to give me some signs that he was okay to talk to about this stuff. Nonetheless, with some hesitation, I told him I was feeling this call to the priesthood. And he said, without hesitation, "Amy, the church needs you." After seminary, when I was interviewing for my first job as a priest, I would say to the new bishop's right-hand straight man, I don't know if anybody's told you I'm gay. I figured I should get that one on the table before they offered me to go any further in the conversation. To which he replied, I don't know if anyone's told you. I don't care. When I asked the next straight male priest who would eventually hire me for that job if the congregation would accept my wife as a part of the worshiping community, he said, if they wouldn't, I'd quit. I laughed, assuming hyperbole. He looked me straight in the face and said, I'm serious. Again and again, this church of my birth and later of my choosing has affirmed my innate God-given dignity, as it should. As it should. It has been a living image of the God of Abraham who promises life abundant. And even though my experience told me that this God and that these people of God could be trusted, I hedged my bets that there would be this tipping point at which I would push them too far. Ain't internalized oppression a bummer? I was pretty sure that I was approaching this tipping point as I started in my second parish. I was the first gay priest they'd called, and they loved me and they loved my wife. They even gave her a standing ovation at our first annual parish meeting, as if it were some kind of divinely ordained blessing. For weeks, I would find myself completely awed. God, you mean I get to live my life with the woman I love? I get to live out my call to the priesthood. And I get to be a mom. I get to live life this abundantly. So many people get to take life abundant for granted. But that isn't the narrative our culture tells us. We're told we're less than. We're told there are limits to who we can be, how high we can rise, how brightly we can shine. Don't believe it. Listen instead to the God who says to you, you will have abundant life. You will have abundant life. Now I know that my experience in the church is not the most common experience. I know that so many of you sitting here and so many more who wouldn't have even dreamt of coming have been deeply wounded by hostile and hateful treatment by people in communities of faith. Shame on those people and communities of faith. We can pray for their redemption. But my story is not wholly unique either. Religious folk may try to make you feel like you are unwanted, unloved, and outcast. Don't believe them. Either stay in your tradition and work to change it if you've got it in you. I don't know if I would. Or get the hell out and find a community of faith that will minister God's healing, grace, and love to you so that you can minister God's healing, grace, and love to others so desperately in need of that. In his poem, The Activist, self-identified quirky queer Quaker poet Peterson Toscano dares us. You want to be an activist? Change the world? Be yourself. Without apology, without shame. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus says, if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. You will be and experience a blessing. So when others tell you you don't belong, keep showing up. When others tell you that pink sparkly tutu isn't appropriate on you, keep wearing it proudly. When they tell you you can't love him, her, them, keep loving deeply. When they tell you God doesn't love you, remember, God created you for life abundant. God who created you in love has made you holy, has made you unique, some might even say queer, and has gifted you with blessings that we need. This world needs you to shine your technicolored light so that we can be transformed into the shimmery butterfly society imagined in our poem, where love reigns supreme, where everyone is seen as a shining reflection of God's love, where everyone is treasured and blessed and as a beloved creature of God, and where everyone is free to claim life abundant. Amen.
Glitter has long been a symbol for the LGBTQ movement of joyful celebration in the face of prejudice and oppression, of pride in the face of hatred and bigotry. So today we are doing a glitter blessing, a recognition of the sacred beauty inherent in every person gathered here today. So as the song True Colors rings out, clergy are going to travel. If you're seated here, they're going to travel from row to row, and you are invited to come to them and then circle back to your seat. We're going to be doing this in silence. This is a blessing in silence as we listen to True Colors. This is an entirely optional thing, and this glitter is set in aloe gel. So not only will it not hurt you, if you've got a sunburn starting, it'll soothe that. We're going to be giving you a glitter blessing on the back of your hand unless you wish to receive it somewhere else. So if you want the glitter blessing somewhere other than your hand, just let the clergy person near you know. And a few of us are going to be roving glittergists, bringing the glitter blessing to those who are not seated right here. So don't worry, you don't have to run up here. We're coming to you. And with that, let's let our true colors shine out, glittery and proud.
I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid to let it show your true colors. Your true colors are beautiful, like a rainbow. So we're in the home stretch. And if you didn't get a glitter blessing and would like one, I'm sure we can help out after the service, hang around, get to know each other, bless each other with our beauty. Bisu, would you like to start us off with this call to action?
Hi, welcome everybody. Last year, I attended this first annual Love.Period Interfaith celebration, kind of by accident, and during Pride weekend. At the time, I was struggling with how to come out to my family and friends and my fears of being ostracized in the community. I was wandering around and I came along a small girl in front of a booth at the event. She looked up at me and she asked me, "Are you transgender?" And I said, well, yes, I am transgender. Good time as any. She said, "I'm transgender too," and then she skipped off and went around a booth like these ones here and tugged on a woman's skirt, possibly her mother, and pointed in my direction. And then I engaged in the booth and talked. At that moment, my thoughts and fears seemed to disappear. My worries of being ostracized by friends and coworkers, my worries about fears of possibly losing my job or finding housing. Here was a child, no more than 5 years old maybe, barely new on the planet, with a minimum of socialization, without command of language like we have as adults, yet was clear and concise about how she identified. That was a wonderful inspiration. As I met families with transgender identified children, they were taking it upon themselves to honor their children's identity. And to the public, forthcoming about their intention of supporting their next perception, their next generation of transgender children. That is, they put their fears aside and they brought their hearts and their intentions out into the open, into your schools, places of employment, worship, into their extended families, in places where they shop, exercise, pray, and socialize. My question out to the greater community of Santa Barbara is to consider how you are going to be part of this paradigm shift in our community. Your businesses, your churches, social organizations are not excluded from the diversity and various identities of our fellow citizens. Change is a constant, especially our demographics of race, gender, and sexual identities. Make no mistake, your livelihood and your family's livelihood and the happiness of your fellow citizens, your customers at your businesses, your constituents, your pupils are linked to your participation in the well-being of us all as a community. They are waiting for you. They're relying on you to step up and be part of this diverse community. Have you talked to your fellow employees and employers about policies in regard to LGBTQ acceptance? Have you talked to your local representatives in your city council, sitting in your state senate, on your school boards, or your local nonprofits, whether they are educating themselves on how to be inclusive with the transgender and LGBT community? Have you talked to your doctors and mental health professionals and asked them what trainings they are taking to help better empower and support the health of transgender and queer patients? Our businesses, our schools, our community thrive only to the extent that we recognize and accept our various identities and callings. That's what makes a community strong. I'm counting on you to have these conversations, to ask those questions for the sake of your neighbors, your families, and your children, and your own happiness.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rabbi Steve Cohen from Congregation B'nai B'rith. I'm very honored to be here this afternoon and inspired. What I'd like to say is that probably for many people, this feels new, relatively new in the religious world, to speak about welcome and acceptance in our faith communities for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer individuals, families. I suppose in some ways it is new, but what I feel very strongly is that it's rooted in the most ancient wisdom and the most universal wisdom. It's an imperative that's actually recorded at the heart of the Torah, and I think it's at the heart of every great religious tradition. Love your neighbor as yourself. That each one of us is called to ask ourselves, what would we want? What do we want for ourselves? I think we want to be appreciated and made to feel welcome and able to express our love openly. The love that we feel for our husband, our wife, the man or woman that we love, to be able to raise our families in a community without embarrassment, without fear. That's what I want for myself and for my own family. I think that's what everybody I know wants for themselves. And so there's this ancient wisdom that simply asks us, think about what you want for yourself, whatever that is, offer it to the rest of the world. Love your neighbor as yourself. To me, there is no more ancient and more important wisdom. So I'm very happy to be here today, to celebrate and to call us to fulfill this very ancient universal obligation. Thank you.
As we transition to sing our final song, I want to say one final thing to all the allies and friends out there. Sometimes we have to move from being allies and cheerleaders to being accomplices. We have to understand what it means to have skin in the game, to step up and take risks ourselves, not just stand on the sidelines with good intentions, but step into the streets hand in hand, understanding who we are and putting it on the line for our siblings. So we're here today to stand together, to put all of our hearts out on the line in the open, to stand with love in this community and in the world. So please join us in singing our final song together, Love Calls Us On.
Give a God of love, Spirit of love. Those who live in love live in you. Bless us as we go forth from this place today. Hold us in your loving embrace, especially in those times when our pain and fear feel overwhelming. Help us to forgive those who harm us so that we can move forward in freedom to be who we are, unashamedly. Empower us as allies and activists who change the world by being ourselves, spreading your love like glitter that shines brightly and sticks to everything it touches. Give us what we need to be ministers of your presence, ministers of love, period. Amen.
Interfaith choirs. Interfaith choir. We have 5 or 6 churches, choir members here. Thank you all so much.
And if I gave you a streamer for the dancing, if you'd bring it back to me so we have them next year, that'd be awesome.
Hi, how are you? I'm great, thank you. Hi,